Right, hello there. I think I forgot to change the titles. Yes, whoops. Avatar poses today. Save. IMVU Hangout. Studio Toolkit. Avatar poses. Right, so what we're going to have a look at today is what is commonly called an avatar. So basically that's just a set of poses that are stuck onto default. Where is it? The default avatar. So that's 80 and 191. So what we're going to do is just create a set of poses using Studio Toolkit. Oh, dagnabbit. Hang on a second. How do we... Right, hang on a second. Just in case. Cue incidental music. Oh. And there's an update available, so hang on. Right, and we're back. Yes, so what we're going to do is an avatar. So I'm just going to search by PID 8T. So we get the basic, not the basic, the base avatar. Oh look, we've got all the that's new. I don't remember seeing that. So we can now, this is incidental, but it looks like we can now assign the skin textures to our materials. Anyway, so actions, what we're going to do is create a simple set of animations or poses that will replace these. Don't know if we'll get time to do all of them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 11. But what we're going to do is some poses that will replace all of these. And this is essentially what's referred to as an avatar. It's not actually an avatar. The avatar is the mesh. It's the rigged mesh. But people refer to the avatar or an avatar as being the thing that is doing the posing, but that's not what but anyway, that's the technicalities. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be using Blender 2.93 LTS for this because so I'm just going to create a new general. Now where is the where's the Where's the thing gone? There used to be a way to... Oh, there it is, splash screen. So this is 2.93 LTS, latest version. Ideally, you want to be sticking with that because that's going to be officially supported, or that's the version that's officially supported by IMVU going forward, because it's not prone to the problems that are caused by Blender updates, which tend to break functionality sometimes, which obviously for a toolkit is an annoyance. So Blender 2.93. So starting with our clean scene, and all we're going to do sidebar, or if you want to be really clever, there's this little thing in the corner here. You can click on that and it opens the tab, or opens the overlay. But that is the sidebar. So tab, animation. So we've gone over creating poses and animations or animated sequences before. So we're going to crack through these. So we've clicked the button and got our rig. We're going to enable auto key. Then we're going to create some, let's see. Let's do, right, so going to do a twist. We're going to do some exercise poses. Enable widgets. We're just going to grab various bones and create our pose. And of course, as we manipulate the rig, we get our keyframes dropped into the timeline. Oops, that's a bit bendy at the chest. So as with the previous exercises, we're just grabbing bones and creating our pose. This is right side. So what we're going to do is rename this because we're going to have quite a few of these. So what we can do is change the name of the sequence in the action editor. That's this thing. We want to do that here rather than in the editor that pops up when we save this. So we'll just call this right stretch. So that's pose 1. Save this. Save as. Live Toolkit, avatar right stretch. So that's all we need to do. We're going to export this, but we have to make sure that we have these 2 options checked. So make pose, that forces the exporter or forces Blender to export this as a pose rather than an animation. And then it'll export all the bones. So we want to override all the defaults. Just save over that again. And then export. So we just click the export button. So that's done its thing. So what we want to do is Studio. Whilst we've got this open, we can import our FBX. So import FBX. Where are we? There it is, FBX. What did we call the file? Live Toolkit. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Too many files. Click open. So select, open. It'll give us a preview of what's in the FBX. So we're going to be doing this a number of times. So set up FBX. Everything else is okay here. So it's not bringing in any meshes, so we don't have to worry about that. Next, no materials. There's our sequence review. That's what it's going to bring in. Then import. And it'll do this every time we import a sequence into the avatar, because it's brought in the avatar skeleton as well, which obviously, because it's an import, it's overridden the default or the original, which we don't want. So back into component, we want to fix this first. So skeleton, that's the skeleton, and we need to reset it here. So asset female 04 anime, click. That'll just reset. So now we can test or check our animation. So stance, standing, click on the ellipses or 3 dots or whatever those things are called, configure, get the pop-up, and our sequence should be at the bottom. There it is. So we want to rename, this is why we're renaming them, because there's a lot of these and we want to make it easy to select the right animation. Otherwise we're selecting the same one over and over again. So that was frame 1 to frame 2, still loops 5. Everything else is okay. Let's preview. It won't do anything because we can just go through just to check and test the sequence. Just replace all of these, because if we don't do this, if we just have the single animation, if we don't do this, what will happen is, if you don't replace all of these, whenever the avatar changes, so whenever you put something on or take something off, or you shift a seat or move around the scene, the avatar, or IMVU re-triggers the animations that's associated with the avatar. And if you've only got one of these set, that means that every time it re-triggers, it could trigger one of these instead of the animation that you want. So it'll trigger all of these. And of course, if you haven't replaced these, it's going to trigger the default sequence, which you don't want. So you have to replace all of these in order to make sure that your sequence is the one that plays, no matter what you were doing in IMVU. So avatar interactions, when you're shaking hands with another avatar. There's our pose. And of course it's being a little funky because we're still using the settings that were associated with the previous sequences, but we don't have to change those right now. All this is doing is just testing the pose to make sure it works, and obviously it does. That's okay. So let's make some more. So the quickest way to do this, or the easiest way, is just to create a new file. And this just means that we are not getting things mixed up. So same thing again, auto key. We can check these for the sake of doing it now. So we need to create our second pose. Use the widgets again. I'm going to twist, stretch to the opposite side. So we could use the widgets for more precision, more control over whatever it is that we're moving, or we can just press the shortcut keys, that's G and R, to rotate, but that free rotates, so it rotates the selection relative to how we are looking at the screen. So if we want precision, use the widgets, or not just precision but control. Whoops, that's the shoulder bone. So stretch to the left. So we'll rename this again. I don't know if you can put spaces in between words in the action editor, or whether, not the action editor, the data block name, this input field. So if you put a space between the words, so word, space, word, I don't know whether the exporter will automatically insert a hyphen or an underscore. So that's number 2. Save as. Lots of files. So we want left. Save as. So that's left stretch. So we had these two set already, and now we can export. Click the button. It's exported that. So that's the one to the right. So same again, import asset, import FBX. Find the file, left, open. It's going to do the same thing again. So preview, setup FBX, everything else is here. That's okay. No materials. There's our sequence, and it's brought in the name as well. So, and this is why we want to be naming them if we're making import, if we're making a lot of sequences. So again, as it's brought in the skeleton and the sequence, it's messed up the default. So component. So we have to keep doing this. Preview. Actions. So what we want to do now is just change this one. Configure. We should have, there it is, left. Select. Preview. So let's see if we can do that again. There we go. That's quite funny actually. So next, new, general. I'm going to use a shortcut key, which is the letter N. N for noggin. Animation tool, append. So let's do, got a stretch. Let's do a twist. Right, so auto key, and these two again. Use the widget. So what you want to try and do, excuse me, let's undo that. So we want to create a twist pose. So we could just twist the avatar, but watch what happens to the feet. We're just going to twist that. You can see that the feet move out of place because the twist, that twist is pulling this leg up and essentially pushing this one down. Well, no, it's actually pulling that one up as well, because they can't, their length is fixed. So if you just twist without paying attention to what's going on down here, the feet will move. So what you have to do is, in the same way that you would in real life if you're doing this, just lower the pelvis so the knees bend slightly, which will mean, so let's just undo that. So if we did that first, little crouch, and then moved, they do twist a little bit, but they don't move upwards from their position. They're not being pulled up by this twisting motion. So keep an eye on things like that. Just going to go through each of these. Oops. Just move the elbow. Yowzers. So that's twisted the arm round because the arm, which is here, has gone behind the elbow control. So keep an eye on what that does so that it twists the arm back round the right way. Can we twist it a bit more? Maybe. That's the blue arm. That's the red. So that's our twist. So look, which way around is that? That's twist to the right. Right, twist. Save the file. Save as. Right, twist. So we've got those two set. Auto key, that's on. So that's our twist pose. Actually, let's so that's the pose. Right, save, export. So it's exported the file. So back in Studio, import FBX, go through the same process again. Right, twist. Set up FBX. See, I don't think you can't ignore the skeleton because the skeleton is used as the reference point for the animation. So we have to keep that in place. No materials. There's the sequence. Preview. Import. That's going to mess the skeleton up again. There we go. Horror movie. Skeleton. Female 04. Preview. So it's reset. So, whoops. We want his animation. Action. So we've done right, left. Configure. So we now have right twist. Preview. So there's the twist. Obviously, again, it's not playing the animations as we actually want them to be played because we haven't altered the default settings that were there when the item was derived. So we can go through all of that later. But all we're doing at the moment is just importing each of these sequences and testing them just to make sure that they do what they're supposed to be doing, which is just basically work. We can sort out the other stuff later. Let's see if it'll do it. There it is. There's the twist. So it's got that one in. Brilliant. Right, new N animation. orientation end. So we want to twist auto key. We want to twist this way now. So tool, whoops, don't use scale. Very bad, don't use that one. It'll break everything. So we just want to use the universal one, which includes all the widgets. Rotate and move. Rotate the legs. Waist. Upper chest. Well, that's a lower chest, and then upper chest. Might be a bit too low. Then the head. Whoops. So what you want to watch out for as well, if you are using the widget, you need to be precise where you click. So make sure you click on the colored loops if you want to manipulate in a specific direction. So I don't know how clearly this will come across on the stream on screen, but if you mouse over the actual colored loops, their saturation changes, which indicates you are over the loop. Then you can click drag. Otherwise, you are click dragging in the pale area of the entire control sphere, which allows you to manipulate in all directions. So be careful with your clicking. I need to move that there, that there. Stretch. And one thing also we can toggle between is global and local. So global orientates the widget's axes relative to the scene. So each of these colored loops corresponds to one of the colored orientation axis markers on the grid, whereas when we're in local, it switches to use the selected object's axes. So it means that the widget orientates itself to the bone or the control element that we're using to manipulate. And we do need to be careful, because we've also got to watch out for, again, I don't know how clearly this comes out through. You've got to watch out for the mesh twisting and it collapsing. So it'll twist at the wrist and collapse at the shoulder. So be mindful where some of these control elements are in relation to that, to prevent those unwanted mesh deformations. Hang on a second. So that might mean, depending on what the pose is, raising the control node on one side and lowering it on the other in order to compensate for the twist and the collapse, depending on what side of the avatar you're on. Right, so that's left. So left, twist, save as. We have to save the files before we can export. Left. That's okay. Those are set. Export. Right, Studio. Import. So we want left twist. Those are okay. Again, next, next, next. Import. And again, it'll make the skeleton go wonky. Component, skeleton, so reset. And we want actions. Right, left, right. That's this one. Configure. Left twist. Oh, what did it do with the... Yeah, so it's automatically, I guess, adding the underscore between the... Even though one is there, we didn't add the anim section or label word. We exported as that, and it's automatically placed a hyphen in there. So right, so leave it at that. Preview. So there's the right one. There's the left one. And again, we haven't fiddled with the settings, so it's relative to the defaults. That works as well. So new, general. So that's 4. So these are pretty simple poses. There's nothing particularly complicated about these other than just paying attention to the position of the bones, not the position of the bones, position of the control elements relative to the pose that we're trying to create. But aside from that, there's nothing particularly difficult about them. So shift the weight over a little bit. Rotate the hip a little bit. So this is just going to be leg lifting on the spot. Whoops. So I'm going to switch to local. Again, watch out for the collapse of the elbows. So that's the left leg. Oops. Let's move this up a bit. So save as, call this left stomp. There we are, left stomp. Save as. Right, so that's the pose. You might find as well that the export button is grayed out unless one of these control elements is selected, which basically means that the rig is active. It's the active object. So if that's grey, just select one of the control elements. Oops, save over that again, save, and then export. Oh, we forgot to change the file name. So left -stomp. Whoops, no, don't change that one. Change this one. Let's reload that just in case. And this is why you create your restore points. Now export. There we go. So again, import left stomp. That's our preview. Set up FBX. So again, all this is okay. Next. Review. Excuse me. Oh no, it's done it again. Reset. Preview. Actions. So we've done that one, that one, that one, that one. Configure. Left stomp. Preview. Oh, it did that a bit quicker than I was expecting. Let's see if it'll do it again. There we go. That works. So new. So which leg is that? It's the left leg, so we want this. Right, so new, general, N, animation. So we want to raise this leg. Shift the weight a little bit. So we want this one back and this one forward. Oops. Elbows. Shoulder. Put a twist. Ouch. That's better. And we want to twist slightly this way. Straighten the head. Local. So that's our pose. So this is right stomp. So it wasn't grey, but make sure that we've got the rig selected and then export. Oh, we forgot to change. Reload. We forgot to change. Let's try this without putting a hyphen in there, see if it'll do it. Right stomp. Save. Make sure we've got these set and then export. Excuse me. So IMVU, import FBX, right stomp, open. That's all right. Okay, okay, okay. Hi. Rain. Don't know how you pronounce that. And thank you. We do our best. Right, so it's meshed up skeleton again. So component, skeleton, reset, preview. So it's reset. Actions. Blah, 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 blah. Left stomp, so it's that one. Right stomp. Aha, so if, I don't know how clearly this will come through, but if we do not put a hyphen in the name and we leave it blank, it puts in an underscore. So I guess personal preference, whether you put a hyphen in there or and do it manually, or whether you just leave it as is and it will automatically place an underscore in between your words. So right stomp. So let's see. That's twist. There we go. It's kind of funny that it seems to favor whatever the sequence is that you just put in. It seems to favor playing that. That's kind of funny. Right, so that's how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can do another 4 more, I guess. Right, so new general. Press the N key for nogging. Append. So let's do a squat. So auto key, blah, blah. And then we'll do a squat. So the arms are going to go really wonky with this because they're locked in place when we move certain bones. So we just want to, in fact, actually, no, what we want to do is what we want to do here is, so this is a tricky one because the others, we didn't move the feet. So for a squat, in order for you to squat, you have to move your feet to your, more or less, your shoulder width. So we're going to move the feet. Like so. Then squat. Have to watch what the knees are doing. And of course the hands have gone really wonky. So we can move multiples of these at the same time depending on what the bones are or the control elements are. So we can shift click and move both of them or more than one at the same time. That might not always work depending on the control node. And it's the same with, so we can rotate, so we rotated both hands there. Whoops. Undo. That's Control Z, or there it is. Edit, undo, redo. So if you make a mistake, either Control Z, shortcut here, Control Z or Shift Control Z, or just use the edit menu, undo, redo. Hello, Embu, and thank you. We do our best. Oops. I don't know. See, the problem with because of the way that the IMVU avatar is made, mesh-wise, when you start going into these sort of extreme positions, we get a lot of mesh collapse, and there's not really a lot we can do about that, which is unfortunate. Undo, so Control Z. Oops. So what you might find as well with that in mind is that in order to, let's just undo that. So undo. So in order to alleviate some of the mesh distortion or collapsing that tends to go on at the joints, what you might find you need to do is moving another bone that's associated with something else, or moving the control point that's associated with something else in order to alleviate the structure of the mesh, because it changes the relationship and the position of the bones. So keep an eye on that. So we can move the pelvis, or is that the hips? I think that's the hips. So we've got these hip rotators as well, but don't get carried away with those, because it changes the shape of the butt. Where's the hand control? There it is. So we can't necessarily do a proper squat pose because of the way the mesh will collapse in on itself. But that can be our squat pose. Let's call that squat. Save as. squat. Make sure skeleton's selected, and then just export. So for this, with these types of poses, we don't necessarily need to do... Oh, that's something else as well. If you export a sequence, it switches... it does something to the interface. So basically switches the skeleton back into object mode. So we're in object mode now. And that's indicated by this orangey tangerine color of the rig when it's selected. So when you export, it switches into object mode. So to do some more editing on the mesh, make sure the rig is selected and then the mode selector switch into pose mode. So we're in object mode right now, pose mode, and then it switches us back to what we were going to do. Now I've gone and completely forgotten what I was going to say. What was I going to say? Oh, that's right. Yes. So with a pose like this, we don't necessarily need to create the reset pose. The exporter is doing this for us. This is necessary. I mean, if you've worked with the old starter files, you had to do this manually in order to get a pose exported. But that's beside the point. For this, we don't necessarily need to do the reset pose. So we're not creating an animated sequence, we're just creating a pose, because when we get this into Studio and we get the properties, all of these things set up, we can use average and it will blend between the static poses and make it look like it's standing up and then squatting down. So it'll do the tweening, as it's called, or the blending between the poses for us automatically. So we don't necessarily have to worry about doing a reset pose like this for the sequence. So we're not making an animated pose, we're making a static pose. All right, so we've exported that. File, import. Squat. Open. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Import. Ooh. Yeah. Awesome. So component, skeleton, similar for reset, actions, and then that one, configure, squat. So we should see eventually. So that default animation must have a low weight value or low. Hasn't done it yet. There we go. So that works. So new, don't save. So let me check off the items on the list. Left stretch, right stretch, leg up, right leg up. Let's do an actual animation. So N animation toolkit, append animation file, auto key. Now for this, we don't need to set make pose, but we might need to set export all bones. So the reason is because, right, so we're going to select all, and then we're going to insert, add keyframe. And this will create a base frame that will form our start point for the sequence. So click on that and it adds a sequence, not a sequence, keyframe for all the bones. So IMVU's frames per second is 30. So 30 frames per second. So the distance from frame 1 to 30 is 1 second. So for poses, we don't necessarily have to be concerned about that because we're just essentially making a static pose. But for our animation, we do have to keep in mind how quickly or how long the action or the animation is going to perform whatever it's going to do. So in this case, what we're going to do is a star jump. So what we can do is set the start and end frame to be the same. So what we want to do here is make sure we've got everything selected. So select all. That selects, and again we're in pose mode by default, so that selects all these control elements. So select all, and then what we're going to do is pose, copy pose. What that does is it copies literally the pose that we're in. And we're going to move the slider to frame 30. So drag click or click drag, then pose, paste pose. So we won't see any difference because we are literally copying the poses, so they'll be exactly the same start and end. But this creates a start point, so that's the start and that's the end of the sequence. So this means that the start and end frames are exactly the same, so this sequence will loop without showing any glitches essentially. But what we're going to do is a star jump. Again, another simple pose. So we've got our start and end frame set, and this is our middle. And all it'll do at the moment is just slide essentially between the two We don't want it to actually just slide. This could be a little bit fiddly. So we need to copy feet poses. So that's the position of the feet. So we're selecting those, pose, copy, paste. And we do the same with the front and the end. So here's what we need to do. Copy, paste. Let's have the avatar crouch slightly before it jumps. So again, feet, pose, copy, paste. And of course the knees knock together. So I want to be jumping off the ground. Don't have to be too high. Oh, yoink. So you can see what's going on. So jump. And then of course when you're in the air, spreading your legs or widening your legs. So we need to increase our animation sequence a little bit so that we can put so I want to be in the air still. Whoops, wrong one. So we can see don't want the legs to be too straight. Let's jump like an Egyptian. And then we need to do the reverse. Hey Sherwood. So we've got the jump in, and we need to do the jump out. So the same sort of principle we're going to need to keep. So we'll have to move this end frame, increase the sequence length just for the moment. So we need to do the same thing. The feet need to stay where they are. So copy, so we're selecting them, shift click, pose, copy pose. See, we don't want that. Paste. That's what we want. Because here we want to crouch down a little bit more. And then jump back up. So again, make sure we've got the feet. So that's the apex of the jump. So this is the feet that we want. So whenever you want to duplicate or replicate a particular pose, make sure you go back to the point where the pose overall, so this is the overall star position, is stopped in terms of that's the termination of the actual action, so that you can then copy strategic bones that you want. Whoops. Shift click, pose, copy pose, and then we'll move that to 35, paste. Because that then means that we can jump paste, so here we're going to jump up. Again, make sure the legs or the feet aren't too straight. So you can see that jump up. So what we want here, we want to more or less stay the same height relative to the ground. So we don't want to drop just yet. And then what can we do with the feet? They need to snap together really. So yoink, star, yoink. We've got to watch out for overextension of the arms as well. So we'll get back to that. Like that point there. And it's the same down at the bottom. So we'll fix this one. This is easier. And this one Drop them a little bit. So that it alleviates what's going on in between the keyframes that we've set. So changing the position slightly so that we just drop them down a little bit on either side of this gap in the middle, this tween as they're called, this in between where the keyframes are blended in this bit. So we can alleviate the pressure a little bit. Whoops, undo. We can alleviate the pressure a little bit by just tweaking the position, relative position of some of the bones. Don't like those, looks like her arm's broken. So we want to avoid stretching the bones all the way out. So click select, so that's shift click. So it's still got a little bit of it. So we might have to insert an intermediary keyframe between 20 and 25 because the hips move down, which leaves the arms stretching. Let's see if we can avoid doing that. Nope. So it looks like I'm going to have to manually. You want to try and avoid doing this, putting keyframes in between keyframes. So you want to try and break your sequences down into set keyframes. So at the moment we've got this quite regularly or regulated. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 onwards up to 50. Your sequences aren't necessarily going to be like that, but these form the primary keyframes. And they go all the way down, all through the bones. What we want to try and avoid as best as possible, whoops, is putting in these intermediary keyframes. They don't do any harm, but it just can make the sequence a bit messy and complicated. So just be aware of doing that. Let's just save this actually whilst we're here before we save as. And always version save so that you have a version to go back to. So this is Avatar Star Jump. So what we might need to do, I don't like how whoops, I don't like how we're missing at frame 50, and it'll be the same at frame 1, we're missing the bounce. So she needs to bounce down a little bit. Instead of just blending straight into that pose. So let's just go with 55. So let's have a think. Let's try pose. Whoops, select all. Copy pose. Drop that into pose frame 55. So our sequence is actually from frame 5 to frame 55. Frame 1 and frame 50 is basically a carry through. It should actually be so the sequence is it's actually from frame 5. And so this is another tip, if you like. Your start and end frames may be the same, so they may be duplicates, and that alleviates the whole glitch that happens as the sequence, repeats. That's the word I was looking for. But as is the case here, just terminating on one of these frames doesn't always look right. So depending on what the sequence is, you might need a little bit of overflow, for want of a better word. So we need for the action, the pose that she's doing, for that to look right, we need to have that deflection as her weight hits the ground. So we have to compensate for that. We have to add that in. But that then means that our loop is actually from 55 to 5 and not 1 to 50. So it's just a question of setting up your sequence to allow for that. So that obviously means that when we get this into IMVU, into Studio, we will have to set the duration for this one properly relative to the sequence. So from 5 to 55. But that is the right. So 55. Let's just play that. It's a little slow, but we're going to get a glitch because it's including that frame. I wonder if yes. So in scene properties, we have frame range. So we can set the animation length here, but for playback in Blender, what we can do is set the frame start point. At the moment it's frame 1. So if we change that to frame 5, we can see the star jump looks the way that it's supposed to. So that's what we'll get in IMVU once we set the duration up. We don't have to worry too much at the moment about this looking slow because we can adjust the speed of that in IMVU. So escape, save, and again, because we are exporting an animation, make sure that all bones is selected, but make pose, that has to be deselected. And then we just export. So that exports our, oh, we forgot to change. Reload the file. We forgot to change. Start, jump, save. Now export. Right, there we go. Studio. Where is it? Star jump. There it is. Open. I didn't even know you went, Michelle. Setup FBX. So this is okay. This is okay. This is okay. So it's got our animation, and it's also telling us how long the sequence is. So it's got 55 frames, which is exactly as long as it is. And Blender, review, import, and again messes up the skeleton. So skeleton, preview. Oh yes, then animation. So configure, star jump. So here, let's miss that for now. Let's just get the sequence in and see if it'll play. There's the squat. There we go. So that works. So rather than, what we can do is use some of the sequences that we've got. So let's just drop in which one. Let's use left twist, right twist. And right twist. Right, so we've got our, so this will be our animations that we're going to use. So what we need to do now is go back through each of the configurations and set the duration. So 1 to 2, that's okay. Whoops. Because that's the static pose, and it's going to loop that 5 times. So 1 to 2, let's loop that 5 times. One to 2, that's a twist, so we'll leave that at 3. Left twist, 1 to 2. Left stomp, 1 to 2. What this is basically doing, right, stomp. Hi, Gracie. What this is basically doing, that's right stomp. So squat, that's 2. Star jump. So this is 55 and then 5. Let's just do 1 loop for that. Squat, star jump. The one we just did, yeah, that's the one we just did. Twist, bigger, so that's 2. And that's 2. So what we may need to do here then, looks like a robot dance. Because what it should be doing, let's go back to let's try swapping these out for replace, because what it should be doing because we've set the so it's the it looks like it's glitching. So if you average the poses, it'll blend between them, but what that often looks like is it looks like what it does is it essentially resets the pose when it loops the sequence, which is why it looks kind of odd. So let's do this for 50. Do that for 50. Do this for 30. Whoops. That for 30. That for 30, replace. That's better. 30. Let's do this for 2. Speed it up 200. So is it? I think that's right. But of course it does mean so 30. 30. So it is doing what it's supposed to do, but obviously the how long you make the poses will determine whether it looks like it's glitching through them. That's kind of funny, actually. Yes, so if it's just one frame and we've got 30 loops, that's basically 30 frames, so that's 1 second. So to change the duration then, so let's go with 90. 90. And then I guess what we can do is the blend in and the blend out. So 5 and 5. 5 and 5. Let's just do 90 for all of them. Blend in 5, blend out 5. So that's okay. Yeah, it's I mean, so basically what the blend does is it's when it switches sequence, it's blending 5 frames in and 5 frames out. So in theory, that should mean it's, avoid that making that joke. It means it should be blending the poses together so they don't look quite as abrupt. So the changes don't look quite as abrupt. But it's just a question of getting the values set relative to whatever the pose is in order for it to look like it's transitioning much more smoothly. Otherwise it's quite abrupt, as we can see with how quickly that works. So it is blending, but it's because it's such a short time frame, 5 frames, that's got to be like a millisecond. So what you then may have to do, depending on the kind of sequences or the poses that you've got, is set the duration long enough to give the blend mode enough time to go from one sequence to the other, well, not smoothly. I mean, it is literally just blending between the two sequences so that the avatar doesn't jump between poses. So if we set this to, let's say, 15, for all of them, it shouldn't look quite so abrupt. Yeah, 1/6 of a second. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think Superman can move that fast. Oh, we've got one. 15, 15. Yeah, we can kind of see that it's already starting to... But even that seems quite short. What's 15 frames out of 30? That's half a second, isn't it, at 30 frames a second? So even that's quite quick. So let's just save this file. Save as. So it's a question really, I guess, of just playing with the values so that the blend between the poses isn't super duper fast. That's half a second. So I mean, it's made a difference from what we had, but it's still not enough. So we may need to tweak these until we get it right. But with all of that said, that is, air quotes, an avatar. So we've created a set of poses using Studio Toolkit, and we've used the animation tool. We've dropped in the skeleton. So that's the append. Let's just do a quick, right, so we've saved that. So new, general, don't save. New, sidebar, toolkit, animation tool. So we've clicked on the append animation file. That drops in the skeleton, not skeleton, the rigged avatar. Then we've made sure that we've got auto key set, and for a static pose, we want make pose. And then for most of the other poses, we might as well just export all bones to make sure that we're overriding the defaults. Hi, Cameron. So we can select export all bones by default, but optionally make pose only if we are making a static pose. So once we've got all that sorted out, we just then use the tools. Whoops, don't use scale. And just pose our avatar. Oops, we forgot to put auto key in. So enable that. And that will automatically place a keyframe in the timeline every time we move one of the bones. And then we're just creating our poses. And the only difference between a static pose and an animated pose is what you do down here. So that's a static pose. Whoops. It is now an animated pose. And of course, because it's animated, if it's an animated pose, we want to make sure that the first frame and the last frame are generally going to be the same. So pose, copy pose. That's at frame 1. Let's just drop that at frame 50. Paste. So we have a loop. So if we have the default frame length, which is not frame length, the animation length is 50, So if we click the play button, so that's these things down at the bottom, or press the space bar, our sequence will just loop. And that's literally the only difference between a static pose and an animated pose, is just the addition of extra keyframes. And then of course, once you've got your pose set up, export. So make sure the rig is selected, or one of the bones is selected. The file has to be saved, so save as. That will then highlight, or we'll actually do it because it won't do it otherwise. Let's just call this test. So now that it's saved the file, if we click on the armature or the rig to make sure it's active, the active object, the button highlights, and we can export. And that's exported our sequence. And then all we do is just import that into Studio. Import button, import FBX, and just go through the process of setting that up. And of course, because it's an animated sequence and we're dropping this onto an avatar, so that's 18191, it'll disrupt the skeleton, it'll distort it. So whenever you import an animation, you'll have to go into skeleton first, reset. So reset the asset to make sure that's female 04 anime. That'll reset the skeleton, and then you can go back into actions and then set up your ensembles. But that's it. That is an animated avatar. The toolkit makes this so much more easy. So much easier. Right, so we'll call it quits there. It's nearly 2 hours. Wow. We'll call it quits there, and we shall see you on the next video. So thanks for lurking, lurkers. Thanks, Arian, Embu, Sherwood, Michelle, Gracie, and Cameron. And who else? Nobody else. That's it. So thanks for watching, and we shall see you on the next stream. Not quite sure what that's going to be about. It might take a look at, you're very welcome, Michelle. Might take a look at, although no promises, might take a look at the room tool, because that's got lots of things that can be done with it. So we'll see. Oh, I see. Chellamore. Yeah. Right. Thanks for watching, and we shall see you on the next one. So, bye for now.